The Jaguars have traded quarterback Nick Foles to the Chicago Bears. And the Bears got the Bears gave the Jaguars a 2020 fourth-round pick for Nick Foles. And remember last offseason when the Jaguars gave Nick Foles a gigantic 4-year, $88 million contract? It's interesting, man. They already moved on. They're already like, hey, Nick Foles, it didn't work. We're going to commit to Gardner Minshew. On we go. And I want to start by talking about Nick Foles and the Bears and that trade for them. Nick Foles is 31 years old. Remember, he's a former Super Bowl MVP. And the Bears are going to be paying him just over $20 million this year, $5 million for a roster bonus, and then the $15 million for his annual salary. And Nick Foles is not a perfect quarterback. He's got some flaws, but I will say Nick Foles is a better quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky, the current, quote-unquote, current starting quarterback in Chicago. And Trubisky struggles with very simple throws. He struggles with regular old execution. At the very least, I believe Nick Foles can be better than Mitchell Trubisky. The current belief is that Trubisky is going to start the year, and we will see what happens. But I personally would love to see. I got a thing in my eye. What's going on? I personally would believe that at some point down the road, either Nick Foles is going to play or beat out Trubisky permanently in Chicago. I think a lot of people are wondering, well, why Nick Foles? If you were going to move on from Trubisky, a lot of people are like, well, if the Bears were ready to be done with their current quarterback, Mitchell Trubisky, they could have got so many other quarterbacks to bring in and compete with Mitch and maybe replace Mitchell in the long term. But you have to remember, this is not just some random quarterback they brought in. Matt Nagy, the head coach of the Bears, and Nick Foles have a history together. In fact, they have a really good relationship. Matt Nagy and Nick Foles worked together years ago in Philadelphia, then later in Kansas City with the Chiefs under Andy Reid. And again, currently, Trubisky's the starting quarterback in Chicago. But that could very, very possibly change throughout the course of the year. But I got to say, here's my big fear. If I have one concern relating to Nick Foles, it's this. I think Nick Foles is a good quarterback. I hope he succeeds. But I will say, how hungry is Nick Foles? How badly does he want it? I know that's a cliche, silly thing, but look at the messaging that Nick Foles has put out ever since he became a Super Bowl MVP in 2018. It seems like he's been coasting. It seems like he's been kind of just going, hey, things are good. They work out the way they work out. I don't know. He comes across to me, whether this is fair or not, the perception, the messaging Nick Foles has put out in interviews and press releases, everything he's said for the last couple of years, he's come across as very passive, very much like, it's fine, we'll see what happens. He doesn't seem like a guy who has the head to the ground, has his head down, working, trying to win a job. I wonder, will Nick Foles do the work? Will he grind to become the starting quarterback in Chicago? I honestly have no idea. Now, full disclosure, man, I really would love, I hope, if there's one thing I hope happens, I hope that Nick Foles becomes the starting quarterback in Chicago, and I hope he's phenomenal. I really do. Number one, I love the story of Nick Foles. I got to say, to be a backup quarterback, then leading your team to winning a Super Bowl, becoming the Super Bowl MVP, it's an incredible story. And I would have liked to see him work out in Jacksonville. However, it happened that one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL, Gardner Minshew, who I loved in college, loved coming out of college. I met him in college. Of course, if anybody was going to beat out Nick Foles, it was going to be Gardner Minshew, and I thought that was awesome. But I would love to see a redemption story for Nick Foles to come into Chicago, come off the bench, become the guy they need. And here's the number two reason why I would love to see Nick Foles succeed in Chicago. Man, the Bears have had really awful quarterback play recently. They deserve a better quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky. That might make you mad. It's just the truth. And man, let me tell you, imagine if the Bears can become a team with a good quarterback. If Nick Foles really does become the answer in Chicago, think about what's going to happen in the NFC North. You have the Packers and the Vikings, who are both very good football teams. The Lions are trying. The Lions are better than people realize. I will say that. And the Bears just need a quarterback. They have a scary defensive line. I like their head coach. Despite everybody hates Matt Nagy, I think a lot of the fault needs to go on Mitchell Trubisky. You can call the right plays, and if your quarterback doesn't execute, the guy's wrong. I think the Bears are just a quarterback away from having a lot of success. And man, I would love to see Nick Foles be that guy. I don't know if that's going to happen. I am not certain that Nick Foles will be the guy, but I hope he steps up. If he does, if Nick Foles steps up and becomes the guy the Bears need, I would be so happy. That would make me thrilled. But I will say we are a long way to go from that. Right now, the current starting quarterback in Chicago is Mitchell Trubisky, but don't write off Nick Foles. A lot of people are going to say, he's a backup. Is he bringing... No, Nick Foles has a relationship with the head coach. They've worked together for years. There's a lot of respect there. I would not write off Nick Foles immediately. The Bears, no matter what they say, no matter how many times they verbally tell you, we're committed to Mitchell Trubisky, well, they wouldn't make the move if they were really that certain that Mitchell Trubisky is the right guy long-term. Keep in mind, Nick Foles at some point, I believe he'll get an opportunity. I just hope he makes the most of it the same way he did in Philadelphia behind Carson Wentz. In case you don't know, Strong Opinion Sports is not just a YouTube channel. It is also a full audio podcast. You can find it on Spotify, on iTunes, on Google Play, pretty much everywhere you find podcasts. And if you like podcasts, please do me a huge favor and give it a listen.